Right, let's talk about the 13 things we absolutely hated from the 80s in Great Britain. And I'm not talking about shoulder pads or mullets. Picture this: unemployment hitting 3.3 million, your local Bobby carrying a riot shield, and Margaret Thatcher telling you there's no such thing as society. But here's the twist. While we were queuing for the dole and dodging football hooligans, this decade of discord actually forged the modern Britain we know today. The very chaos we despised became the crucible that transformed our nation, creating everything from rave culture to financial deregulation. Grab your riot shields, because this isn't your typical nostalgic 80s retrospective. Remember when signing on became a national pastime? By January 1982, unemployment hit a post-war record of 3.07 million. That's 1 in 8 workers collecting their giro. But here's what they don't tell you in the history books. Entire communities developed underground economies just to survive. In Liverpool, the black economy was estimated to be worth £500 million annually by 1985. Young people faced 25% unemployment rates, creating what sociologists called the lost generation. University graduates were stacking shelves at Tesco if they were lucky. In places like Consett, where the steelworks closed in 1980, entire families had 3 generations on the dole. The government's youth training scheme, paying a princely £25 a week, became a running joke. YTS stood for Youth Exploitation Scheme in most council estates, where kids were taught to wire plugs for 40 hours a week. The psychological impact was devastating. Studies from the time showed unemployed men were twice as likely to commit suicide as those in work. Dr. Norman Beale's groundbreaking Calney study tracked families for 6 years, proving unemployment literally made people sick. The 1984 to 85 miners' strike wasn't just industrial action, it was civil war by another name. 187,000 miners downing tools, 11,291 arrests, and communities literally split down the middle. What most people forget is the violence wasn't one-sided. Police officers from London were bussed into Yorkshire pit villages, earning overtime rates that exceeded miners' annual wages. The Battle of Orgreave in June 1984 saw 5,000 police face 10,000 miners in scenes resembling medieval warfare. Arthur Scargill himself was knocked unconscious, his iconic baseball cap lost in the melee. Here's the controversial bit. BBC footage was later proven to be edited to show miners charging first, when police had actually initiated the violence. The BBC's own cameraman, John D. Barron, later admitted he was shocked by the manipulation. Internal memos revealed police were paid £30 a day riot money, more than miners earned in a week. Entire villages survived on soup kitchens run by miners' wives, while scabs who crossed picket lines needed police escorts to buy milk. In Easington Colliery, the women's support group fed 3,000 children daily. Some families still don't speak to each other 40 years later. If you're finding these forgotten facts about 80s Britain fascinating, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to reveal about the IRA's campaign will shock even those who lived through it. April 1981, Brixton burns. But this wasn't just mindless violence. It was the inevitable explosion after years of the Met's Operation Swamp 81. Yes, that was its actual name, echoing Thatcher's infamous 1978 "swamped by people with a different culture" interview. In just 6 days, police stopped and searched 943 people in Brixton, arresting 118. Half were released without charge. The black community's unemployment rate? A staggering 55% for young men, while white youth unemployment in the same area was 20%. The spark came when police tried to help a stabbed black youth, Michael Bailey, but the crowd thought they were arresting him. The riots spread like wildfire. Toxteth, Handsworth, Chapeltown. The damage? £45 million in today's money. Lord Scarman's inquiry revealed systematic racism in policing, but here's what they buried in the appendices. MI5 had infiltrated black community groups, stoking tensions to prevent communist infiltration. The Special Patrol Group, disbanded after killing Blair Peach in 1979, had simply been renamed and redeployed. The IRA's mainland campaign cast a shadow over daily life that today's terrorism alerts can't match. Between 1980 and 1990, over 50 bombing incidents rocked Britain. The 1984 Brighton hotel bombing nearly decapitated the entire government. The bomb had been planted 24 days earlier by Patrick Magee, who checked in under the false name Roy Walsh. 5 died, including Conservative MP Sir Anthony Berry. The IRA's statement chillingly noted, "Today we were unlucky, but remember we only have to be lucky once. You will have to be lucky always." Deputy Prime Minister Geoffrey Howe was pulled from the rubble in his pyjamas. What's rarely discussed is how normalised the fear became. Every unattended bag sparked evacuations. Irish accents attracted suspicion. The Birmingham 6 and Guildford 4, innocent men tortured into confession, showed how paranoia corrupted justice itself. By 1988, broadcasting restrictions meant Gerry Adams' voice couldn't be heard on TV. Actors dubbed his words instead, creating surreal political theatre. Forget the beautiful game. 80s football was urban warfare with a half-time break. The firms, organised hooligan groups, turned Saturday afternoons into running battles. Chelsea's Headhunters, West Ham's Intercity Firm, Millwall's Bushwhackers. These weren't just fans, they were paramilitary organisations. The statistics are staggering. 1985 saw 242 arrests per weekend during football season. The Heysel disaster killed 39 Juventus fans when Liverpool supporters charged. The youngest victim was just 11 years old, the oldest 58. English clubs were banned from Europe for 5 years, with Liverpool serving 6. But here's the untold story. Many firm members were successful business people during the week. The ICF included stockbrokers who'd swap their pinstripes for Stone Island on Saturdays. Violence wasn't just working-class rage, it crossed all social boundaries. The Chelsea Headhunters leader Steve "Hickey" Hickmott ran a successful building company. Aberdeen casuals included oil executives. This wasn't poverty-driven violence, it was tribalism in its purest form. Nothing united Britain in hatred quite like the community charge, the poll tax. A duke paid the same as a dustman, making it the most regressive tax in modern history. By 1990, 1 in 4 Scots refused to pay. English councils hired bailiffs who needed police protection to work. The March 1990 London riot, 200,000 protesters, 340 arrests. Trafalgar Square in flames marked the beginning of Thatcher's end. The violence started when mounted police charged peaceful protesters near Downing Street. One striking image, a wheelchair-bound protester being dragged away by 4 officers. But the real story was in the council estates. Can't pay, won't pay groups organised military-style resistance. In Strathclyde, 880,000 people refused to pay. Bailiffs were blockaded, councils bankrupted, and ordinary citizens became outlaws. Tommy Sheridan, future MSP, was jailed for 6 months for leading the resistance. In some areas, 80% refused payment. The tax that was meant to make local government accountable instead made it unworkable. While we worried about nuclear war, acid rain was silently killing our forests and lakes. By 1984, Scandinavian scientists proved British power stations were destroying Norwegian forests. The government's response? Denial, then delay. Meanwhile, 67% of British trees showed acid damage by 1987. Here's what they kept quiet. Classified reports showed acid rain was eroding Westminster Abbey at 10 times the natural rate. The limestone gargoyles were literally melting. Lakes in Scotland and Wales became sterile, too acidic for fish to survive. The Clean Air Act came too late for thousands of acres of forest. Even today, some Welsh lakes remain fishless graveyards from 80s pollution. Still with me? Brilliant. Drop a comment below sharing your own 80s horror stories. And trust me, you'll want to subscribe before I reveal the government's secret nuclear war preparations. Don't die of ignorance. The government's AIDS campaign was intended to inform, but instead, spread panic. By 1987, tabloids were reporting you could catch HIV from toilet seats. gay men faced unprecedented discrimination. Some dentists refused treatment, landlords evicted tenants, and employers fired staff based on suspicion alone. The numbers tell part of the story. By 1989, 2,372 Britons had died of AIDS. Peak deaths came in 1994 with 1,531 in a single year. But the social impact was worse. Section 28 banned schools from promoting homosexuality, leaving an entire generation ignorant and afraid. Chief Constable James Anderton called gay men swirling in a human cesspit of their own making. Princess Diana shaking hands with AIDS patients without gloves in 1987 was genuinely revolutionary. Her simple gesture did more to combat stigma than years of government campaigns. The Terence Higgins Trust, founded in 1982, provided support the government wouldn't, saving countless lives through volunteer networks operating in legal grey areas. "Don't worry, there won't be a hurricane," Michael Fish famously assured us on October 15th, 1987. Hours later, 122-mile-per-hour winds killed 18 people and felled 15 million trees. Sevenoaks became one oak overnight. But the real scandal, the Met Office had received warnings from French meteorologists that they ignored because the data didn't fit their models. Earlier that week, weatherman Bill Giles had actually predicted severe weather, but his forecast was overruled. The storm caught late-night revelers at Soho's Groucho Club, who emerged at 3 a.m. to find Dean Street's lampposts bent horizontal. The storm revealed Britain's crumbling infrastructure, power lines from the 1930s, signal boxes from Victorian times, emergency services using World War II-era communication systems. Some villages lost power for 2 weeks. Insurance companies tried to avoid payouts by claiming it was an act of God rather than a storm. The cleanup cost £2 billion, but the psychological damage was deeper. If we couldn't predict weather, what else were they getting wrong? Beyond acid rain, the 80s served up an environmental horror show. The Chernobyl cloud passed over Britain in May 1986, contaminating Welsh sheep farms. Even today, some farms remain under restrictions. 334 farms were still affected as of 2012. The government initially claimed there was no danger, then banned lamb sales for precautionary reasons. Sheep had to be marked with paint and tested before slaughter. In Cumbria, cesium-137 levels were 100 times normal. Industrial disasters piled up. The Piper Alpha oil rig explosion killed 167 men in 1988, Britain's worst offshore disaster. Chemical plants leaked toxins into rivers, turning them orange. The Thames was declared biologically dead. Asbestos in schools was killing teachers and pupils, a scandal covered up until the 1990s. We were literally poisoning ourselves for profit. Tower blocks became vertical slums, lifts permanently broken, stairwells controlled by dealers, and heating systems that never worked. By 1985, some Manchester estates had 70% youth unemployment. These weren't homes, they were holding pens for the unwanted. The Broadwater farm riot of 1985, where PC Keith Blakelock was murdered, shocked Middle England. But residents had complained for years about living in a concentration camp. Cockroaches were so endemic that council pest control gave up. Mental health issues skyrocketed. One study found clinical depression rates of 40% in high-rise residents. The brutalist architecture meant to house the working class instead imprisoned them. Protect and survive. The government's nuclear war guidance advised hiding under tables and painting windows white. NATO's Able Archer exercise in 1983 brought us closer to nuclear war than Cuba. The Soviets genuinely believed it was cover for a first strike. Here's what they've only recently declassified. Regional government headquarters, secret bunkers for select officials to survive nuclear war, were stocked and ready. Lists existed of who would be saved and who wouldn't. Local councils prepared mass grave sites. School children practiced duck and cover drills that would have been useless against nuclear blast. The 4-minute warning system was tested monthly, a reminder that civilization was always 4 minutes from ending. By 1989, house prices in London were 4 times those in Liverpool. While yuppies snorted cocaine in city wine bars, northern factories closed daily. The service economy boom meant nothing if your skills involved actually making things. The statistics are stark. Male life expectancy differed by 7 years between Surrey and Glasgow. A boy born in Glasgow's Calton area had a life expectancy of just 54 years, lower than Gaza. University admissions from northern comprehensives dropped 30% through the decade. The BBC moved programming south, regional newspapers closed, and London-based media painted northerners as either quaint relics or benefit scroungers. Granada TV's World in Action was one of the few national programmes still made outside London. This wasn't just economic inequality, it was cultural apartheid. When Band Aid sang "Do They Know It's Christmas?", many joked they should have visited Middlesbrough first. So there you have it. 13 reasons why the 80s in Britain weren't all synthesizers and shoulder pads. From mass unemployment to environmental catastrophe, from civil unrest to the constant fear of nuclear annihilation, we survived a decade that tested our nation like no other. But here's the thing. We did survive. These horrors forged modern Britain, for better or worse. The protests created new civil rights laws. The environmental disasters sparked the Green Movement. The violence led to community policing reforms. Even the poll tax's failure gave us council tax, marginally less awful. If this blast from the past has stirred up memories, good, bad, or ugly, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. What did I miss? What 80s nightmare still haunts you? And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into Britain's darkest decade, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Cheers.